No, no, no. It couldn't be that my good and kind man would send all this information to family and friends, beginning with my parents and siblings, then extending as far as friends we knew in college.
Don't let infidelity infiltrate your relationship. Subscribe to the channel to know how women behave and what they can hide from us. Sit back and listen to this extremely interesting story.
When we married, I thought he would be my man, partner, hero, lover, best friend, and soulmate for life. I always assumed I'd be a loving and faithful wife, true to her man through thick and thin, never even looking at another, much less betraying my vows and my marriage. The first time I saw him, we'd been married 8 years and were thinking of starting our larger family. I paid him little mind, but there was something mysterious, naughty, and calculated about his lingering gaze. I knew I would put it out of my mind and not pay attention to him. I was certain my husband was overreacting when he warned me to be careful of this predator, a man known to steal wives and bed them as so many trophies. I would never fall for such toxic masculinity. I was a wise woman of the world who loved her mate and would never be duped. I was grossly offended that my spouse thought so little of my strength. The first time he entertained me, I was mortified that I'd fallen prey to his advances. His timing was perfect, right after one of our rare marital fights, part of which he witnessed at a social gathering. Hubby left town on business the next day for a week. I was still in a huff when this skilled hunter stopped by for a supportive chat. 60 minutes later, I was on my knees in our marital bed, being played with by this insidious snake that I had let into our garden. After he left, I vowed it would never happen again and was certain of myself. Discipline.
Okay, sure.
I was certain my loving husband never suspected a thing. Clean sheets, wife and lingerie, a bottle of his favorite Napa cab, and a night of fun when he got home. My confidence in my ability to use my womanly wiles to pull the wool over his overly simple view of the fairer sex was brimming over. I hadn't been caught. My pride led me to believe I could keep a lover on the side, and my beloved would never find out, never know of my betrayal. 2 or 3 times a month for almost a year, I let loose all my carnal desires with my stud. Hotel rooms, his private office, obscure and remote parking lots, and even my marriage bed on occasion were all points of explosive rendezvous. So convinced was I that hubby was blind to my cheating. I was certain the deputy sheriff who approached me, asking for ID, and then gleefully announcing,
"You've been served,"
must have made some dreadful mistake. My loving spouse would never do such a thing, humiliating me in front of my co-workers and boss, perhaps putting my employment at risk.
Naomi could not have imagined how her tricks would soon backfire on her.
I knew as I drove home in tears that if I could just get him to listen to reason, he'd give in and forgive me. My confidence in my ability to manipulate and control him would win that day, of this I was sure. Words and phrases like soulmate, we'll grow old together, we'll start a family, combined with entertainment, even giving him my buns, which until then had been reserved only for my lover, and put him in his place. In his place, and let him forget about this horrible idea of divorce, and live and move on with my marriage. I was shocked to hear his proof of my infidelity after I thought I'd been so careful, so smart, so smug. He'd known for 6 months, but had delayed while he built his strategy and made his plans. There was no way he could be right in claiming that we hadn't had fun for more than 2 months, because he couldn't bear the thought of touching me when I was with the man he had warned me about and whom I trusted so much. And he couldn't convince me to give up my promises to be faithful to my loving husband. He couldn't have been smart enough to track our lecherous antics, but there were dozens of black and white and color photos that could just as easily have been published on some websites. Every moment of our entertainment, in the hotel, in our marital bed, in his car, there is no way he could have such evidence.
Naomi was stunned by the consequences.
No, no, no. It couldn't be that my good and kind man would send all this information to family and friends, beginning with my parents and siblings, then extending as far as friends we knew in college. He'd never subject me to such public shame. There was no way his bespectacled puny lawyer was better than my man, hating take no prisoners female shark. I would get the lion's share and make him rue the day he crossed swords with me. This couldn't be happening. The judge can't be siding with him and his mousy legal counsel. It was impossible that he'd keep the house and 75% of the assets. I was hearing words like ironclad prenup and wanton disregard for marriage and disgraceful behavior. But they weren't registering. This had to be a nightmare, and I'd wake up any minute. My now ex-husband would meet me in the hallway and listen to my final apology, which I'd make sound so sincere. He'd then begin to forgive me and eventually take me back. After all, men really are so weak. Since my ex was gone from the courthouse in a flash, ignoring my cries to, "Wait a moment so we can talk," I'd call my lover and move in with him. He was better anyway, and I'd show my former spouse just how pathetic he truly was. I hung up the phone in disbelief. My lover had just laughed and laughed at the idea that he would take me to his place and we would be together. There was no way he could have just told me. I was fun to have fun with while it lasted, but he wasn't a second-hand item. I didn't just hear him say that I could offer myself to people he knew upstate. Alone, I couldn't be alone. It made no sense that almost everyone I knew, except for my mother, refused to even talk with me. It was unfathomable that even my dear mom, while being kind, wouldn't let me move in with her. I'm standing in a parking lot, isolated and lonesome, with a positive STD report from my doctor in my hands. Inconceivable. In retrospect, I think I may have been mistaken.
Friends, this story should serve as an example for you of how to keep your heart unbroken. What would you do if you were Naomi's husband? I'm interested in your opinion in the comments. Subscribe and listen to the next story. If you are under 18, do not listen to the following story.